G'day guys, Mac with the Outer Circle, and today we have another Horus Heresy Exemplary battles. First thing to point out is we find out in this article, directly from Andy Hoare, that yes, we will be able to use all of the Exemplary battle units that have been released in Heresy 2.0, even though they didn't feature in the leaked rulebook. I put that down to the leaked rulebook was probably put together before these units were. So anyway, the battle today is about the Raven Guard and their battle for the Perfect Fortress. This was a planet where Fulgrim made the boast that he had constructed the Perfect Fortress, because everything he does is perfect, yada yada, it's Fulgrim. An interesting choice of all the battles they could have done, and an interesting unit that they chose to represent it. They've chosen these red Cataphracti Raven Guard Terminators. Let's look at the rules. So, scrolling down through the rules for these guys, we have 275 points for 5, so not the cheapest in the world, but we're getting weapon skill 5, which is good, 2 wounds, which is good. Their initiative is only 4, which is on par with most Terminator types. Do remember, being Raven Guard, with the Legiones Astartes Raven Guard that is, they're going to get Furious Charge, essentially, if they do not make a disordered charge. So don't make a disordered charge. That's crucial advice there. And the Sergeant of the squad actually has 3 attacks, which is 1 more than most squads get. They have Implacable Advance, so they are a scoring unit, they are an elite choice, and they have Stubborn, so they'll never drop below Leadership 9, which is pretty nice. On the downsides, they have an Improviser, which means they're going to be very, very easy to blind. So if you're Raven Guard, you go up against Gorgon Terminators, stay well away with these guys. But what makes them really interesting is they have a Teleportation Transponder, which is a spicy meatball. They are very rare in the Horus Heresy to have deep striking Terminators, basically. You may take up to 10 deliverers, so a 15 model Terminator unit. This is something I've noticed popping up more and more, is Terminator squads going up to 15, and I don't really care for it. It's not a bad thing, just I don't care for it. I think 10 is a perfectly large enough unit, and 15 just becomes too unwieldy to move around on a tabletop, but each to their own. The models come with a combi bolter and a power weapon of any type, so that'll be maul, sword, or axe. They may exchange their combi bolter for a heavy flamer, Reaper autocannon, or multi-melter for every 1 in 5. That's going to be a tough choice. I really like the multi-melter for the ability to punch vehicles a little bit of range on Terminators. I think it's a really cool and very fluffy choice for a lot of Terminators. The Reaper autocannon just doesn't have enough output of fire to really make it worthwhile in most games. And the heavy flamer is pretty good if you're getting Overwatch, which is awesome for Tartarus Terminators, but being Cataphracti, you're going to lose that Overwatch ability. So essentially, all you're going to be doing with the Heavy Flamer is getting really close with it, flaming a squad, and then killing models that make it harder for you to charge, which, again, is you're going to find it difficult to put yourself into a good position to charge in the first place. Now, any model in the unit may exchange their combi bolter for a combi weapon. That could be useful, putting combi plasma or combi melter or combi grenades, combi volkite, any of that kind of stuff on this squad could be useful. And any model in the unit may exchange their combi bolter and power weapon for a pair of Raven's Talons, so mastercrafted lightning claws with the rending special rule. That's pretty good, but 10 points each, that will add up fast, because you're already going to be at 325 points for 5. And then you're going to be going another 250 points on that to go up to 10, and then another 250 points on that to go up to the full 15 models. And if one of them doesn't take, or 2 of them, or 3 of them even actually, because you can put 3 multi-melters into this if you take the full 15, then you'd be going up even more. You go up another 25 points, more, maybe. 45 points, geez. That's a lot of multi-melters. Gorax's Shame. That's a weird special rule. If you take them in a Loyalist army, then they count their toughness as being 1 point higher when they determine if they take instant death or not. So if you punch them with a Power Fist, you're going to need to be strength 10 in order to instant kill them, because they're going to be essentially toughness 5 for determining instant death. And it's a bit of an odd rule. Potentially very good. It's not going to save them from dreadnoughts. It's not going to save them from force weapons, so Thousand Suns might have their way with them. Monstrous creatures, a lot of strength 10 monstrous creatures out there, and a lot of strength 10 weapons, but hey, strength 8, they're going to be safe from. They're kind of becoming kind of like Iron Hands in this case, with the neg 1 strength thing. These guys are instead gaining 1 point of toughness. What's interesting is if they are taken in a trader army, they gain Hatred Corax. It's such a niche special rule in a trader army. That Loyalist one is going to kick in every game that a Loyalist plays with them, but for a trader, it's only going to kick in when they play against Corax, and that is going to be very, very fucking rare. And if Corax is in the same army as them, so they're Loyalists and you're taking Corax, then they can't be deployed within 18 inches of him, which kind of sucks, because that's even when they enter from reserve, so deep striking, that kind of thing. That's bizarre. I'm also wondering how that rule interacts with things like scatter. If they deep strike and they scatter to within 18 inches of him, what happens then? They cannot be deployed is how the rule is written, so therefore is that a deep strike mishap? Do you just move them the minimum distance, or do you just say, hey, look, it's circumventing the rule by sheer luck, therefore let's just let it slide? Don't know, but really bizarre choice. And Corax may not join a unit that includes any models with the Corax's Shame special rule. So, interesting unit. And as you can see, an interesting paint job, but you'll notice that one of the weapon options that they do not have is Power Fists, and yet in the very promo artwork we have of them, one of them's got a Power Fist. So, odd choice right there. Maybe they need to tweak the rules slightly. So, what do I think of them overall? They are not what I would have picked, so let's just judge them first on their merits. Do they fill a niche that the Raven Guard lacked? No. Everything they do, Dark Furies do better. But at 2 wounds, Cataphractii armor, they have some resilience, especially in a Loyalist army. In a Trader army, they have next to no utility over regular Terminators beyond the fact that you're getting additional wounds and you have some interesting war gear options. You lose some, but you gain some in the form of the Raven's Talons. They're going to be a blender on the charge with the Strength 5 attacks with the Mastercrafted, but it's going to be a real pain in the butt because if you have multiple models with this, you're going to be rolling a lot of individual models' attacks. Because 4 attacks per guy with the Mastercrafted special, you have to roll them individually. So you don't, because you've got to be able to pick out the one reroll that each model gets. Weapon skill 5, they're going to be hitting order units on 3s. Strength 5, they're going to be wounding order units on 3s, and their lightning claws, they're going to be getting rerolls to wound, and they're also going to be rending on 6s. So, they'll be nasty enough. But are they better than Dark Furies? No. Except for that rare instance where they're getting hit with Power Fists, which, yeah, okay. Against things like Fire Drakes or other Terminators, they'll probably have the edge in close combat. Sekhmet are going to absolutely eat them alive. Sekhmet will absolutely murder fuck them if they set off their force weapon abilities. Even Kennetai Blade Occult could have potential against them just through sheer weight of attacks. Dreadnoughts, though, are going to be the bane of this squad. They have no way of fighting Dreadnoughts beyond Furious Charge and fishing for 6s on the rending and trying to get up to the point where they can get those 6s to try and get the rare penetrating hit. Otherwise, they're just going to be scratching futilely at the Dreadnought as it punts them across the room. Yeah. Color scheme-wise, obviously the individual artist who made these decided that this is a pretty cool scheme. It's not referenced anywhere. It's just one that they liked, and it's therefore what they've displayed. Personally, this is the Deliverers as shown in Book 3 of the Horus Heresy. And they are pretty much exactly what you'd expect of a Raven Guard. They have some sort of tribal islander, like Maori, Fijian, Tongan, filigree or artwork laid across the leg, tribal artwork, as well as the Raven Guard Legion iconography, very plain, very black armor. Then you have, of course, This is the pre-Corax colour scheme. Now, an interesting thing they've done with the fluff on this unit is they're talking about Corax's shame. Corax doesn't hate the Deliverers. I think they're getting their background mixed up here, and I could be wrong, but generally I think the company forgets to read their own books very well. I know it's a bit of an arrogant statement, but bear with me here. In Book 3, the Deliverers are Corax's Terminator element, and they don't really mesh well with his preferred tactics, which is high speed, rapid maneuver, hit and run, chop off the head type strikes. Terminators are for heavy assault, and he utilises them to take out a space station, although grudgingly, because he acknowledges that they're the best unit for the job. And they're mixing that up, I think, with the Terran members of the Raven Guard. The Terran members of the Legion, especially the Legion that Corax was first introduced to, had spent their whole time through the Horus Heresy pretty much working alongside the Sons of Horus. And all the worst traits of the Raven Guard, the pale skin, coal-black eyes, a really bloodthirsty, almost World Eater or Night Lord's style of combat, was what they had developed, and these were brutal. These were gang members recruited from the streets of what is today like Indonesia and the Pacific Islands, Northern Australia, that part of the world. And, these Maori bikers and Raid, the movie The Raid, all those guys are the guys they recruited into the Raven Guard from Terra. So they're pretty brutal, these guys. And they were Corax's shame because they didn't sync up with his view of the Astartes being a shining beacon to humans, as it were, being the best that they could possibly be. Instead, these were all bloodthirsty motherfuckers. So he took the majority of the Terran elements under, I think it was Arcus Fel, was the chapter master or the Legion master at the time, and just sent them off into the void. Go fight some Xenos, I never want to see you again, and I'm going to pretend you no longer exist. And this was the colour scheme that they wore at the time. It was called the Dust Clad because they used to cover their armour in dust and powder to help them camouflage in, and it was apparently some trait they carried from their gang roots back on Terra. That's very different to red-clad Terminators with Forge World, okay? And so I think I look at this armour and I think of the Terminators. I think, what is like this? Carcharodons. So the Carcharodons in 40k are pretty much confirmed to be Raven Guard successors. I believe they're actually a combination of what they call chimeric, which is multiple chapters or legions gene seed. Night Lords and Raven Guard are the progenitors of the Carcharodons. Essentially, they became the Ashen Claws in the Horus Heresy, and then they get codified as a chapter at some point later down the line. Of course, because of their roots in the Horus Heresy and the Great Crusade, the Carcharodons have a lot of Heresy-era armors, like this Mark V power armor, which is synonymous with the Horus Heresy, one might say. And therefore, they arc back to that lineage. And you can see the armor scheme, the tribal markings, all very similar to this original Raven Guard pattern. And then, if we go on to this sort of design here, you can see that the Raven Guard Legionnaire in this image, again, wearing a bit of Mark V, but he looks like he's got some Mark VII torso, with the Mark V and 6 shoulder pads, the Mark V legs, the Mark III helmet. It's a real traditional Mark V hodgepodge of armor, and it looks really good to me. And this is the sort of colour scheme I'd be going with if it was me doing the Deliverers and I wanted to make them out as some sort of specialist Terran-style unit that deviates from the traditional Raven Guard tactics. But of course, as we know, this here is what the Deliverers look like as presented to us in Book 3 of the Horus Heresy. Now, that's not to say I hate what they did with the red. It's not to my tastes, no. But the artist is perfectly entitled to render them however they like. I had a lot of black painted units in my White Scars. My Kizagan Land Speeders and my Leviathan Dreadnought painted black because I wanted them to be from that Ebon Kashig sort of stained, tarnished reputation background, the lost their honour sort of look, because I was playing a lot of Sagya Mazan. And therefore it made sense to me to paint them in that colour. In this case, I'm not sure where the red's coming from. Maybe the artist just really liked it. Now, what would I have done different with this release? Well, for a start, I'm very over Terminators, as I've pointed out in numerous preceding videos. Now, to their credit, they've done Raven Guard, which is awesome, because Raven Guard have not been touched at all since Book 3. But that's Book 3, by the way, in, I believe it was March of 2014. And that's over 8 years ago. So they've been a long time between any love in the Horus Heresy. But I wouldn't have done Terminators. We've had Huskars, we've had Dominator Cohort, we've had Atramenta. What else have we had? I feel like we've had another unit of Terminators. We've also had Destroyers, lots of Destroyers. Well, there's 2 routes they could have gone down, maybe 3 for Raven Guard. First and most obvious is the Raptors. The Raptors are the ones that featured prominently in this actual battle in the book Deliverance Lost, at the Storming the Perfect Fortress, and the Raptors were Corax's Primaris-like attempt to rapidly create Marines. They weren't Primaris. What he did was he essentially took Primarch DNA that was left over from the Primarch program, given to him directly by the Emperor, and he used this in place of standard gene seed to augment his Space Marines. And of course, being pure Primarch DNA as opposed to just regular gene seed, it very rapidly matured aspirants into full-blown Astartes. Not only were they Astartes, they're actually slightly superior to the Astartes around them, although in direct one-on-one combat, it was kind of a draw because the Astartes around them had experience versus the physically superior Ravens recruits in the Raptor cohort. And of course, the Raptor program was then later on tainted by the inclusion of demonic essence or demonic DNA, a demonic virus, into the soup, the Primarch DNA soup, which corrupted them, and it mutated many of these Raven Guard in the Raptor core into something resembling pretty much Gelvorback. Mutated them, and their brand new Mark 6 armor they were introduced with, the 2,000 suits that were delivered. I think it was Captain Abraxas, but I could be wrong. One of the Imperial Fist captains delivered 2,000 suits of armor to the Raven Guard. And this was what equipped them to help rebuild the Legion. It was a gift from the Imperial Fist from Rogel Dorn, the Emperor. The Emperor gave him the DNA, Rogel Dorn gave him the armor as a, get well soon, Corax. And they rebuilt themselves. And these Raptors are beloved in Raven Guard circles because of what they represent. And to not have the Raptors and instead get Deliverers, which, they're not the worst units possible, but Raptors would have been a lot better choice. But in a drought, the thirsty man can't be choosy with the quality of water he gets, I suppose. So, another choice they could have had was Moritat Prime. They could have had their own console. Lots of legions get their own consoles. Why couldn't the Raven Guard have got Moritat Prime? They are the legion that invented the Destroyers and Moritat concept. Before the Raven Guard, Destroyers existed, yes, but the Raven Guard codified the tactics and the war gear and such, as opposed to just giving rag grenades to random dudes in your legion. Or at least that's my understanding of it. And the Moritat is definitely 100% from the ground up their concept. They could have created a Super Moritat that's unique to the Raven Guard. They could have given it different war gear. Instead of 2 Volkite or 2 Plasma Pistols, they could have done something else with it. And they have Moritat Prime Kaitus Nex as one of their special characters. So they could have done something really interesting and unique there. They could have even given them their own unique Master of Signals. Much in the same way that, Alpha Legion have the Saboteur, who's kind of like a Vigilator console. Or the Word Bearers have the Diabolist, which is kind of like a Librarian meets a Nullificator or an Esoterist, something like that. They're a bit of a funny one. So, it's not too crazy they could have done a HQ choice. That would have been really fun for Raven Guard players to have someone that's unique to them that really plays to their style of combat. And of course, the other option might have been to go down that jump pack route. There could have been something similar to Destroyers for the Raven Guard specifically, which, again, being the... I know I've said before they've done Destroyers to death with the Horus Heresy Exemplary battles, but for the Raven Guard, it's a different story, because they're the primogenitor. They're the source of where this comes from. They could have done something different with them. They could have done something fun and unique, like maybe Destroyer jet bikes. Okay, you're still destroyers, yes, but you're taking the concept and you're expanding upon it. You're doing something unique with it. In any case, of course, they chose to do none of this, whether it's paint schemes, rules, the works. So, whilst I don't hate them, it's a very underwhelming release for me. But like I said, in this case, I can at least be grateful for the fact they gave something to the Raven Guard. So now, if they can do something for the Salamanders, and if they do something for the Iron Hands, then we'll be starting to gain a bit of ground here. And if they don't touch Sons of Horus, Imperial Fists, or Wordbearers for the next decade, I think we'll all be better off for it, because those legions have gotten way too much shit lately. And these guys are the ones out there fighting the Heresy. So, anyway, that's all from me. That's all from the Outer Circle for today. I hope you enjoyed the episode. I hope you see where I'm coming from here, and let's not turn this into 3 videos explaining beakies or something, because people couldn't grasp what I felt was a simple point, which is very infuriating. Infuriating? That's not the right word. Disappointing is probably closer to the mark, and I don't want that. I want it to just be made clear that I don't hate the models, don't hate the paint schemes. It's not what I would have done, and I've explained what I would have done instead. And it's up to you guys to let me know what you think or what you would have done. Especially the Raven Guard players. You should know all this lore and background, have the real investment in this, and is this what you wanted or what you would have done? Let me know, I'll be interested to hear. Back with the Outer Circle. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one.